Even when you feel low, you can still go. Even when you feel slow, you can still go. Even when there's no hope, you can still go. I never answer to no, man, I still go. Go, 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 yo, go, go, go. Hustle hard, hustle every single day. I'll be making moves till I'm buried in my grave.
That goes south to South Street. You can find me wearing hip hop dress. It's not green. Wearing black. MIBs don't mind me. MCs ain't in my league. You gotta be in another caliber to be considered a challenger. Post up, most ducks mimicking parature. Combos and lines where they get it embarrass you. So if you scared, gotta try to sing it, but get committed. Humming.
What up, y'all? Welcome to another episode of What Words Are Worth. And today, I got a phenomenal guest. This artist has been able to sustain his career by not just rapping, but also finding other ways to stay creative, to contribute to the culture in various arenas. One of the most talented artists that you may have heard or you may have not heard of, but today you'll get to, get the introduction to what he is and what he does and where he's been. And he's an inspiration to me watching what he does because he's touched arenas and areas in which I never probably even thought hip hop may have gone or would go, and so on and so forth. So this guy is very motivational. If you follow his Instagram, he's always somewhere doing something new, doing something creative. So welcome to the stage, Megaran. Let's go. This is a very dope, I would say, opportunity for me to really talk to you about everything you've done, because we've met kind of just like do a feature type of thing, and then it's kind of like, all right, let's see where we end up now later on. And I've been able to see where you've ended up at, and I had mentioned in the intro, you've ended up in arenas that I haven't even been able to like touch, or people may have not thought hip hop would have gone. So this is lovely to do this with you on the basis of you have contributed to hip hop. You know what I'm saying? There's no doubt about it.
Thank you.
Yeah.
First of all, it's a pleasure to do this, man. Like, this has definitely been a long journey. We chatted a little bit off mic that, like, it's crazy to see, you meet people in different paths, like whether you at a show with them or, hitting up for features or just online kind of friendships. And then you go your own paths, and then the paths come together in different places. So it's really dope to see, man. Like, it's beautiful. And like, I appreciate you having me on for sure.
All right, so let's begin with the name, the origin of the name. Now, I'm a gamer. I game. I've had every system since Atari 2600. You know what I'm saying? So I've been gaming for a minute. I don't game as often as I used to. I'm NBA 2K. I'm 2K. And then I got Oculus, and my favorite game of all time now that I have Oculus is Robo Recall. That's my favorite game ever because it's like being in a movie. I don't know if you ever played that yet.
I haven't played it. What's it like?
Yeah, it's like basically you John Wick in a world of robots.
Oh, that's cool.
Yo, it's incredible. Like, you could pull shotguns off your back, grab somebody and hold them as a shield, then walk, and then like blast, then toss them, rip their arm off and beat somebody with it, turn around. Yo, bullets coming at you. You could duck and weave the bullet, watch the bullet fly by you, or you could grab the bullet in midair, look at it, and throw it back at somebody.
Yo, that's nuts.
Yeah.
Okay, I need to play that. That sounds
Robo Recall is the illest game I've ever played in my life. I'm sorry, y'all.
Okay.
Yeah, it's two guns, run out of bullets.
That sounds super dope. I played a little bit of the virtual reality stuff. And like some of it gets too real for me. Like when it's like you're in the world and you're like, yo, what is going on? Like that escape from reality kind of scares me. I remember playing a driving game in there once, and like you look to the side and there's other cars. Like you're just like, oh my God, like where am I? You know what I mean? Like you can get lost in that world, which is what makes it so dope. But for me, it's a little scary because I'm like, man, I might bump into this coffee table or something that's near me, you know. But it scares me because it's just like such a different like sensation, but it's like super cool, man. I tried to play Resident Evil on that, and it was.
I got Resident Evil for it too.
Boy, no, that thing was. Whew, I was like, I got to stop this. It just felt too real, you know.
Boxing is ill too. Creed is bananas.
Okay.
Yeah, I love the boxing on there. But you know, let's talking about that. Then I'll get back to the origin and the name, of course, too. But speaking about that, what do you think about the AI world with the performances? Because John Robinson does performances in there, and he also charges people to come in, and it's a global thing. Also, there's a couple other people that do it as well. They're like in this world of the VR.
Oh, so like the metaverse kind of performances.
Metaverse performances, yeah. What do you think about that?
Man, I feel like just like
Focus,
everything.
Focus is heavy into that. You know, Focus.
Okay, yeah, Focus.
Yeah, he's heavy into that.
I think if you can perfect it, like you're in way early, because this is something that I think will be the future for concerts and things, because it's really dope. Like we spend so much time in front of our screens, so then like why not be able to interact with your favorite artists? I think it's the future. I saw like Snoop getting into that early on and things like that too. I think right now I've tried it. I work with a couple of companies, and they just haven't been able to really perfect the technology yet. But I think if it's done well, like it's the future, man. Like I'm as I still, you know, a touring artist, I realize that like I don't know how long the tour business can sustain, man. Like I feel like it's the top dogs and it's everybody else, and so it's really hard to fit in and to figure out your place in this new space. Concert tickets getting more and more expensive. You know, Live Nation and Ticketmaster owns everything. So it's like, it's a really rough spot for these people that are kind of in the middle. And so we're the folks who need to be thinking of the next innovation, because that's normally how it goes. It's the indies that come up with the cool ideas, and then eventually, you know, the mainstream will adapt and adjust to those things. So
I started seeing that transition that you're referring to going overseas. We used to go overseas a lot, right? It used to be heavy. Go overseas. They want us over there, And then the sponsors started going like, well, we're paying all this money to bring these acts that aren't known. We could bring Snoop and these bigger names to these concerts. And then the concerts that me and you may be at like 30,000, 50,000. Now we're not there next year. Next year is Rick Ross. You know, like the world started changing and evolving. And then the other aspect of it was, when we started going over there early, this is early 2000s, and, you know, internet still wasn't that big yet. A lot of the acts that were on the come up after a while started saying, you know, these American artists coming over here headline, and we need to start our own culture. So now when you go to those countries, we're not going to probably headline. We'll be like right under their country's rapper or artist. You know what I'm saying?
That's interesting. And I do think that's dope. Like, I feel like, you know, I got some friends in Europe and stuff too, and I've seen some of the debates happen, you know, where they're like, "Yo, you gotta preserve our scene," you know what I mean? Like, you just bringing in these guys, giving them money, and they leave, you know.
It happens,
and that happens even at the smallest level, like in a town in the U.S. where you're like, "Yo, if you come through, it's just good faith," and that's really what hip hop's about, to put on someone in the local scene, to have whether openers or local vendors, local supporters, local businesses, local hosts, something, you know, because I always feel like, you know, it's not really a good look when you're coming into a place, you collect and then you leave, you know, without necessarily bringing something and leaving something there for them. That's what I really love about every time I seen KRS-One perform. This is like on a whole different level, but every time I see KRS-One perform, he does a cypher and he brings up people from the crowd. And like, that's about the smallest, least thing you could do, to be like, you know what, who in here is an MC that's trying to get on, or just that wants to showcase something? Come on up here. And now your people that are in the crowd see you in that moment, and they're like, dang, you know, like, so even on the smallest level, like KRS-One left something in that town. You know, he gave that person a ton of confidence that they can now build on. So it's just taking that to a whole nother level when you're playing for, you know, 30, 40, 50,000, then, you know, it's so important. I think that's what hip hop is, and it should continue to be, is giving and growing together. You know what I'm
Right.
saying? And I've seen the debates happen, whether it's the local scene or anybody being like, bro, you are just giving money to these people and they're just in and out. And, you know, put on the locals, put on the UK guys, put on the European guys, you know? So it's, it's a necessary conversation, I think.
So let's get to the origin of your name. So I know about it pretty much because I'm a huge Mega Man fan. And that was one of the games that changed my life when I was a kid. I remember buying it. I remember going to Toys R Us, pulling out the paper that said the price of the game. You take it to Toys R Us counter. They go get it because it was more like a warehouse back then. Yep. They go bring the game, which was so wild though, right? This is buying these Nintendo games at that time. You kind of bought something based on the cover. Mega Man's cover was kind of wild. But it was one of those things kind of just like, you know, you're a kid. You don't want to leave. You don't want to leave without something at the toy store.
Yeah, that cover was wild. You know, it's funny because the relationship between Japanese developers and the US distributors was so kind of fractured back then because of course there was no internet, not a lot of email correspondence. So you just writing letters back and forth. You're like, oh, this game's called Mega Man, blah, blah, blah. And so a lot of stuff will get lost in translation, like literally. And so when I discovered Mega Man, it was from Nintendo Power magazine. And I was subscribed to this mag, and the second, maybe or third issue had Mega Man 2 on the cover. So I didn't know about Mega Man 1. I got it at Mega Man 2. And the cover was so dope. It was like this claymation cover on the magazine. And so I was like, oh, this is really cool. I need to go get this game. And then the game was $50. And my mom was like, I'm not getting that for you. So we were at the store, and Mega Man 1 by this time was on clearance because, you know, once the game gets, you know, a little older, it's on clearance. So Mega Man 1 was on clearance for $19.99. And I was like, well, if I can't get Mega Man 2, Mega Man 1, let's go. And then my mom was like, all right, she picks it out, you know, from the front, and they bring it to me. And I look at the cover and I'm like, this must be a mistake because this thing looks crazy. Like if you ever seen the cover of Mega Man 1, there is no really connection between what the game looks like and this cover. It's this old white dude holding like a pistol with like this crazy helmet cocked to the side, is in this weird stance. And it looks nothing like the game at all. The game is cartoony, big eyes, colorful. And this thing is like kind of gritty, but like mad cheesy. And I was like, this can't be it. But all right, it's $20. And like you said, you got to leave with something. Right. So my mom would get me a game, and I couldn't get another game until I would beat that game. And the thing is, Mega Man 1 was super hard. This game was very, very difficult. Crazy. And I had to come up with some kind of cheat code just to get through it. Like, you know, they came up with this trick called the pause trick, where you could pause the game and your weapon would keep going and hitting the thing. But what I realized, what got me through or got me into it, is that it was one of the first games where when you pause the game, like to go to the menu screen, the music would keep playing. And so this was something that happened in probably every Mega Man game. And I don't know if every game does this or did this back then, but it's the first one I realized. And so when I would pause the game to go, you know, do my dishes, do my homework, whatever, the music would keep going on loop. And so I was just like, yo, this is kind of jamming. Hey, this is kind of dope, you know? So that's the origin of the name came from how cool the music was. And what I used to do is take my little tape recorder. I had a little kid quarter, it was called, this little recorder, and I'd sit it by the TV and I hit record and play, and I would record the songs as they came out through the TV. And then on the other side, we had just got cable. So on the other side, when Yo MTV Raps would come on, I would record the music videos as audio tapes. And so one side of my tapes was hip hop, it was Big Daddy Kane and everything else. And then the other side was Mega Man and all these other video game musics. And so I would put this in my Walkman, go to school with it. And friends would call me Radio Raheem because my name's Raheem. So they'd be like, oh, it's Radio Raheem. He got his radio. And at that time, because I didn't want kids to know I was listening to video game music because they probably thought that was lame, I would be able to flip the tape real quick to let them hear the rap music that was on the other side. They're like, oh, what you listening to? I'm like, oh, check this out. And then I would hit the little auto reverse button and be like, yeah, look at that Big Daddy Kane, Slick Rick. Yeah. I speak the language, you know. And but then on the other side, it was like Sonic the Hedgehog and DuckTales and Final Fantasy and all that other music. And
Ooh,
so
those
that was,
classic games, all those games you name is
yeah,
fire.
just classic, great music. And I just really appreciated what they were able to do with these soundtracks with such a limited palette. You know what I mean? Like with the NES, you get about 6 channels of music, or maybe less. And then you're able to create these tunes that have been in our head since kids. You know, everybody knows did it,
Right.
you know, stuff like that. These tunes have been with us, and they're some of the most recognizable tunes ever. And they did it with such a small palette, with having 4 tones to be able to create these tracks with. And I just really appreciated that. So later on through life, you know, I didn't realize it then, but that was the origin. Like I was like, oh, video game music, hip hop. Like,
And then
what
you
if
get into these albums.
yes. So then we way fast forward again. This is something, it was there, but I ran from it because again, when you're young and impressionable and you're growing up in the city, you know, you're just so worried about what people are going to think when you're trying something that's different, you know. So, but we were the video game nerds of the block. So me and my boys would play these games constantly, and we would just figure them out, cheat codes, and everything. So all the like cool kids would come to us like, oh, go ask the video nerds how to beat Mike Tyson. I bet you they know, you know.
Right.
And I'd be like, well, actually, I kind of do, you know. So I would like figure it out because I had the Nintendo Power, and I'd be like, all right, let me help you beat Mike Tyson and stuff like that. So that
pardon me, not to mention the Nintendo Powers now are super valuable. Now they're valuable. I wish I kept mine.
Man, I wish I had them. I've seen people keep them like in good shape, and they're like, they're worth a lot of money. There's like a museum now for the Nintendo Power music, like games, and for the magazines and the covers and stuff, and like the people who drew that actual art, because they made mock-ups, and then they took good photos of those mock-ups. So they have a lot of that stuff in glass cases, like that goes around in museums. So it's pretty crazy to think like this stuff is like become art and culture, you know. It's pretty dope. So yeah, like fast forward, video games just kind of stayed with me. I was always a gamer, always a hip hop head. I'm balancing these 2 worlds, you know. Like I have my video game nerd friends and my hip hop friends, but it was like we was always afraid to talk about the other thing with the other person. You know, it's like we was in the comics and this and that. And then I realized like we were all into the same stuff. Like all the 80s babies was into comic books, was into video games, was outside playing. And for some reason we just were like, we never talked about it. We never like brought those worlds together. And you know, we were getting the Marvel trading cards, and we were just doing all types of stuff and just being kids. Yeah. And so fast forward, when I get to the PlayStation 1 has a game on it called MTV Music Generator. And MTV Music Generator is a music device that you can you pop in the game and you can make beats. And everybody's like, yo, you can make music with this. And then I put it in, and I was like, nah, this is whack. Ain't nothing but techno, drum and bass. It's just, and I was like, this is kind of whack. But then I found out you could sample. So this is before I could afford any equipment. So you could sample with the PlayStation. So you hit sample mode, you eject the disc, boom, and then you pop in another disc, and you could sample like 30 seconds of anything, and then put your disc back in, and then like chop the samples. And I was like, yo, this is a game changer for a $30 game, being able to do this. So I started trying to make, I was like, I think I figured it out. I can make beats now. So I'm making beats, and they were kind of all right. And so at this time, I'm like, yo, I think I got this. So I learned by kind of copying beats that I really loved. And once I copied, I think Mobb Deep's Quiet Storm. And when I got that beat pretty much down, I was like, I think I can do this now, you know? Because I remember reading about like Dilla and other great producers being like, all right, I'm going to just make a Pete Rock tape. And these are Pete Rock flips. You know what I mean? Like, here's this person's flips. Here's a Dr. Dre tape, you know? And so I learned that the greats, you know, learn by, you know, you emulate and then you innovate, you know? And so that was how it was. So I was working, and next thing you know, I get a CD of the Mega Man soundtrack. And I was like, let's see what I can do with this. And so I pop it in, we start sampling it and flipping it. And I was like, oh, this sounds kind of dope. And at that time, I had never heard this done before, like video game music with hip hop, until the Cocoa Brothers song "Super Brooklyn."
Yeah.
And when I heard that song with the Mario Brothers,
yep.
and I was like, yo, that like blew my mind, because I was like, here's the moment where everything just came together. Like the video games you love, the hip hop you love, all comes together. And I was like, it can be done and it can be dope. And so that was like my blueprint. I was like, okay, if I can make something that bangs like Super Brooklyn, then I might have something. And so I started working on a Mega Man album, because I really love Mega Man, but I was calling myself Random at the time. So this gets into the name, the origin name question. Random is a comic book character from X Factor. He was a character that was able to shapeshift. And he's like this really big dude, but he could transform into anything using matter. So he'd be like, all right, I would just transform into a gun and then get myself out this situation, you know? And so that's what I wanted to be as a hip hop artist, being able to transform, you know, do my thing and be versatile, you know?
Yeah.
So I was like, oh, Random's going to be my name. And then as you go through life, you realize Random is not the most like Google friendly name, you know, where you're like, all right, if I'm looking for somebody named Random on the internet, who knows what could come up, you know?
Right.
So I was like, man, I probably should look into a new name at some point. And at the same time, I'm working on the Mega Man album, and I'm flipping Mega Man beats. And I was like, well, what if Random and Mega Man came together? And it was Mega Ran, bam. And that's what happened. So it was the name of the album was called Mega Ran. And then, you know, I say the funniest names always have a way of kind of sticking with you. They're like kind of given, you know, they're like titles that are kind of given and not really like you created. So I made an album called Mega Ran, and it was by an artist named Random. And then when the album started kind of blowing up, people were like, yo, that's Mega Ran. That's Mega Ran. Yo, Mega Ran, play our show, Mega Ran. And they would start booking me as Mega Ran. And I was like, but my name's actually Random, but I made an album called Mega Ran. And it was so hard for people to separate it. So I was like, yeah, I'm Mega Ran. It is what it is. And so that was how it began. But at the same time, I was like, but I want to be able to keep this duality, because Random is who I made my first album as, which you're a part of, by the way. Thank you. And so it's much more of a soulful, kind of conscious hip hop storytelling album. And then when I do Mega Ran, it's more playful, video game, comical, MF Doom, maybe style of music. So I was like, all right, I'm going to separate them. I'm going to be Random when I do this, and I'm going to be Mega Ran when I do this. And then you realize on a independent artist budget of $0, you can't really like double brand yourself as two different things for two different audiences. It's just not possible. So I always liken it to the best example. I did a show in Philly. I was playing a show with Sean Price, rest in peace. And I'm about to do the show. I think this guy in the front, he had this low hat, hoodie on. And I was like, all right, let's run the next song. And this guy was like, yo, do the Mega Man joint. And I was like, what y'all know about Mega Man? And then the crowd went crazy, like, yo, I remember that, yo. And that was when it clicked in my head to be like, yo, the hip hop generation grew up with these video games and these comic books and all these things that we love. And so it's one and the same. Like it all came together for all of us. And I was just feeling like, oh, it ain't cool to talk about these things at a hip hop show. And it was like, wow, Mega Man, yo. And so that was the moment where it taught me that like I could be Mega Ran in all places, you know. And so that was where I guess kind of the rise of this kind of came, where I became kind of comfortable with it.
Don't you have like a world record of the most?
I do. It's a Guinness World Record is for the most. Let me remember how it's put. Oh, it's the most songs referring to video games that are commercially available. And so this dude hit me up from Guinness, like in 2018, was like, hey, how many songs do you have about Mega Man? Like just about. And I was like, oh, let me look back, because at that time I had about maybe 4 or 5 albums of Mega Man stuff. So I was like, man, it's about 100. And he was like, whoa, that's definitely a record. I'm like, what do you mean? He's like, yeah, we're working on the Guinness World Records book for video games, and we want to put you in there. And I was like, wait, what? And so yeah, and it's a crazy story because they were like, "Yo, we got to put you in there," and they say this thing that people kind of always say, like, "Well, we're based in London, so if you ever find yourself in London, you know, come holler at us." And I was like, "If I ever find myself in London, it's not likely to happen." But I was like, you know what? I could be in London in 2 months, and it was like, word.
I know what you're saying, because if you hear the opportunity for that, you're gonna figure that out.
You're gonna figure it out. I was like, well, I can go to the Guinness World Records office. I can get given a plaque. I can perform there. Man, please, I'm gonna make this happen right now.
Exactly.
And so that's what I did. I wound up booking a whole tour in about 2 months, and we started in London. And it was awesome, man. I got there. We did a live street performance. They gave me the plaque, and they met me at the airport and gave me a ride. Like it was a really dope feeling.
This is what I'm talking about when I introduce you. I'm trying to tell people like these are arenas and places that, you know, I haven't seen, or like my mindset isn't on it, or they haven't popped up. So it's incredible for people to see that. So
I just think of the line, like, you know, we never knew that hip hop could take it this far. Like it's limitless where hip hop can go. You know what I mean? And it's so dope. And I saw an interview with Jazzy Jeff, who's like probably my favorite DJ, you know, one of my favorite people in the world. And he started off saying, he was like, you know what? He said, hip hop is not music. And I was like, wait, what do you mean? And he was like, it's better than music because you can sprinkle hip hop on top of anything.
Yep.
And it becomes doper. It becomes hip hop. You know,
it does. You know, like your perspective is totally different than mine. And then we have another rapper that come in the room different. And then we make a song. Everybody's verse is different. Everybody's perspective is different. So that's hip hop is one of those things that just can change anything once it's just like you said, a sprinkle of it on there. I saw that you also appeared on like various video game soundtracks, right? And then also you were a keynote speaker. So how important was that, and like a big moment to be like, wow, they respect me enough to be at the keynote speaker at this video game music?
Man, that was definitely a career highlight. I got an email, shout out to my brother K Murdoch, who does so much producing for me. They hit us both up and was like, yo, we're going to be at Louisiana Tech for this video game music conference. They do this every year, this big symposium on music. Right. And he said last year it was at Michigan, the University of Michigan, and somebody wrote a paper on you. And I was like, word? And hold up. And so
you got a copy of that paper? Oh man, you need
I have it.
Paper.
I got it. Yeah, like they sent it to me directly after I asked. I was like, yo, for real?
That's
right. They
They
wrote basically about how you combine cultures and things like that, and what like hip hop and basically remix culture is, and how, you know, I've been like a person who's brought hip hop to new places or whatever. And I was like, what? And so they were like, well, somebody wrote about you, and that really impressed the board. And so now next year they were like, oh, we got to have him a part of this. So just to let you know, they was like, so last year's keynote speaker was the person who created the Halo soundtrack. And I was like, yo, this year is you. And I'm like, wait, what? Like, this is crazy to think. Like, these are just levels, like you said, that I never imagined being at. So right. I was like, what? And you got to know this is important. If you know anything about me, I love wrestling. So when they tell me when this event is, it's the same time as WrestleMania in Dallas. And I was like, well, I guess I ain't going to WrestleMania because this is nuts. Like, and this is one of those things, like I would say it's bucket list, but it's bigger than that because this isn't even something you could imagine getting to, you know what I mean? When I was playing video games in the basement, you know, or sampling tunes, you know, on my PlayStation. Like I never would have imagined
that. Like, even though WrestleMania is going on, and I know how big of a wrestling fan you are, I think it's dope that you were able to kind of acknowledge the importance of doing this keynote thing on the basis of your background as an educator that I know about. And then not only that, just understanding like WrestleMania is going to be there. I'm trying to make my mark to be as big as WrestleMania. So I need to make my mark. So you do the keynote. You also spoke about wrestling. You've written a song, Bow Down, for Xavier Woods. How did that feel to be such a big wrestling fan and then all of a sudden you're making music for some of your favorite wrestlers.
Man, that's insane too. Like I grew up loving wrestling, going to wrestling events in Philly. At Penn State, when I went there, we would go to wrestling events. We would all have wrestling pay-per-view parties, and we'd all pile up in the room and watch. And then to go from that to being a part of the pantheon of pro wrestling, it's like, it's crazy. It's almost like being in a comic book, like in a Marvel comic for me. It's like, man, I'm like part of the story now, which is nuts. So shout out to Xavier Woods. He had to specifically push for that because they have their guys, their people who write their songs.
Exactly.
And they're like, man, we got this done. And he was like, well, I got somebody that I think is really dope. And so he hits me up. It's like, I'm gonna connect you with their people and let's make this happen. And the guy was like, well, today is Thursday. This needs to be on TV by Wednesday. So can you do this? And I was like, all right, let's go. And so you got to be able to do it. One of my mentors, he said, if you don't learn how to say yes, then you better get out of this business because don't nobody want anybody around who's like, I don't know. I don't know if I can do that. I don't know the answer. I don't know. It better be, I'm going to try.
I try to tell people too about like, especially with sync licensing, it can be like you get contacted right now and you got to have the decision in 40 minutes. 45 minutes because they're trying to get the show, like you said, next week this comes on. We don't got time to play around with you. We're gonna have to find somebody that's ready to go with it. So that having that instantaneously being able to just say, let's do it, and like you said, saying yes. So as far as like what got you into wrestling, was it just part of that culture coming up? Because I was one of those kids. If I'd have knew you at that time, I was the kid with the wrestling. I had the dolls that just had the one pose.
The one pose.
I had the wrestling ring. I lost a lot of He-Man dolls buried in the sand at the beach, thinking I could remember as a kid. And I went back and as a kid can't remember where I buried them.
Can't remember where they were. Man, we were one and the same. It was wrestling, G.I. Joe, the Transformers, the Voltron, all that stuff.
All of that.
And so it was just it was like it was such a part of us coming up, and we were so interested in what was happening with the TV and culture at that time. And so wrestling was a part of it. My cousin Howie, I would go to his house on the weekends, and on Saturday morning he would watch wrestling. And he had a poster up on his wall. He had Jimmy Superfly Snuka splashing off the cage, jumping. And I'll be like, Howie, what's that, man? And he'd be like, let me show you. So he put on wrestling, and we loved it. And so back then when they did WrestleMania, if you weren't in the town where it was happening, they would do closed circuit TV.
I went to WrestleMania 3 like that.
Yo, that's crazy. So did I. So in Philly, they'd be like, yo, closed circuit TV.
I went at Madison Square Garden.
Yo, that's
for WrestleMania 3.
So did I. Yo, that's nuts. And so you go in there, you could get your snacks, you could buy your merch, and you sit and watch it on TV. And man, like it was so much fun. And I just remember Macho Man was my guy, man. I was, Macho Man. And so I would come home, my mom would be like, well, you know that's fake, right? You know, all that stuff. But it just, man, I was just always a part of like, because it's a real life live action comic book. Like that's what's the dopest thing about wrestling is like, if you like comic books, these are jumping off the pages. These are huge dudes doing unbelievable stuff. So it's like seeing the Avengers in front of you. You know what I mean? So what's cooler than that? So, and I got out of it as a while, like, you know, as you grow up and you're like, I got to focus on other stuff in college, just teaching and other things. And then it was Xavier who got me back in. His group, The New Day, is a group of 3 brothers who were like, yo, we're going to come in and do something different. Like most wrestlers are big and mad. But you know what? We're going to smile. We're going to let y'all know that it's all right to smile and clap and be happy. But we also going, you know, we don't handle business in the ring. And so they would do that. And they just became hugely popular. And I was a really big fan. And Xavier hit me up. I was like, yo, would you want to write music for me? And I'm like, yes. And so fast forward, before that ever happened, he's like, one day, if I ever get like a solo chance, I'm gonna put you on. But before that, he let me come to events. I would get to go backstage. I get to walk the aisle, and I'd be like, this is insane, you know? So I've been in ever since. Like, it's just been a really, really fun journey. So I've written songs for him, for other companies, for AEW, for Ring of Honor, and other wrestlers. And yeah, man, it's just a dream to be able to write stuff like this.
Yeah, so we delved into your background, which is, I mean, it's super extensive. I mean, I went through it and I was like, I got to figure out how to kind of touch on each thing like that, right?
Yeah.
So the other thing is, now the reason why I actually have this podcast is because I'm all about celebrating the writing of artists like you. Like okay, you touch all these arenas, but people don't understand the craft and how you come up with it. And that's the premise of the show. So that's why I love having you on here, because people are hearing all these things you accomplished, but they don't know how you got there and how does he come up with these things. So we're going to delve into the writing part of it, as far as like, so what are you doing? Are you writing on paper, pen, computer, phone, in your head? How will you?
Oh, well, I've tried them all, but for me, it's the phone. And I only started that because I was in a session with Reef the Lost Cause. Shout out to Reef.
And shout out to Reef.
And he flipped out the sidekick. This is back in the day. And he started typing on the sidekick, and I was like, hey, what you doing? He's like, yo, I put my rounds in the sidekick. And I was like, yo, that's cool. Like, how does that, work for you? He's like, man, it works great for me. Like, and so kind of since then, I was like, oh, it's good, because I used to write on paper, but then when I signed a deal with the Japanese record label and they wanted my printed lyrics to put into the jacket and to translate, I was like, whoops. Now,
exactly.
What I got to do, I got to type them anyway. So from that day, and that was like 2009. So since then, I was like, all right, well, no more books. Like, I love the composition books. I still got my old ones, and it would be scribbles everywhere, words all in the margins, all up and down every page, drawings, everything. But it's just more efficient for me to put it in a notepad, because now I can copy paste and get the lyrics to people quickly. When I need lyric videos done, when we need translations done for other languages, all that stuff, like, it's there. So it's more efficient to type. But I've tried the in your head. I wound up forgetting stuff that I like. And I was like, I don't like this idea, man. I had something really dope and I forgot it, but I freestyle a bunch. And through the freestyling, sometimes I try to find new methods. I read that that Nas, for the albums that he did with Hit Boy, he would freestyle the whole song, and then he would stop it and be like, this was pretty whack, but I said something cool there. Okay, cool. I like that flow there. Cool. And he would take that home, that little mumble freestyle, and then write around that.
Right.
And I was like, oh, that's a cool idea too. So I do something like that too, where I'll sit in the studio, because sometimes your first mind is your best mind. And you come with something the very first time, you hit a flow, you hit a pocket that really, really works, but you ain't got the words for it. And then you come back and you figure it out. So with rap, this is why I don't understand how people can ever say that hip hop is not music or rap's not music, when the rhythmic portion of it is so important. You know what I mean? Like, you could rhyme something A to B and be effective, but without any sort of rhythm or variation within that, it becomes a little dull. So yeah, I think with freestyling, it definitely encourages you for your brain to just go in different places. And sometimes that first mind and the first way you hear that beat could lead to something special, and you'll lose it if you're not recording it or writing it, Right. So yeah, when I would do it in my head, I just didn't trust my head enough.
Yeah, I like to see the words, and I need to kind of start editing and like recall stuff, and like I like to have that little batch of stuff I could grab from it and then go from there. So what about?
I can agree. I can see, because you're a very cerebral writer, so I can tell that you got to have something in front of you, like you got to put it down and then use it later.
Yeah, so I got to put the puzzle together. I got to put the puzzle together. So what about chorus or verse first? Does it matter which one?
It depends. The last song I wrote, I think if the chorus is particularly catchy, then the chorus comes first. Last thing I did this library song for my children's album. And the moment I heard the beat, I was like, all right, bam, chorus just hit me. And so it really depends on the purpose of the song. If it's like, all right, I want this to be for kids, I'm thinking about my audience a lot of times. It's like, if it's for kids, it should probably be a little catchy. So I might be working on a chorus first. But I write verses. I probably write a verse every day. Whether it's just a verse, it's just a freestyle, it's just something I'm thinking, and then pieces of that will appear throughout, the year and different stuff. But yeah, it really depends on the beat. Like if the beat hits me, but I've tried lately to do chorus first. I did a lot of touring with Homeboy Sandman, and he was always telling me that he comes up with the chorus last, but because the verses are very lyrically dense and heavy, he was like, the chorus needs to be the total opposite of that. He's like, I need a chorus that my 99-year-old grandma can sing, as well as my 2-year-old kid. But the verses is where they're going to get the meat and the nuggets. You know what I'm saying? But that chorus is the dessert, is something very palatable for everybody. And so I've taken that to heart, where I used to write these super lyrical choruses, that sound like 16-bar verses.
Yeah.
And now it's like, well, if it's supposed to be a hook, it's supposed to hook you in, then, think simple. And it's hard to turn that part of the brain into something else, which is why I guess a lot of people, collaborate for hooks. Like, all right, let me get somebody else to do a hook.
I interviewed Homeboy Sandman a few weeks ago. So
Nice.
super
That's
dope.
my guy.
Super dope, man. So your writing style, for me, when I hear your writing style, knowing you from early on to now, I think you've like mastered the way to be, well, a great storyteller, to figure out what the details are for what you're writing for. Like early on, you might have been writing to write about personal stuff, but now I think you've honed it in so dope that you're able to do personal. What's this written for this particular concept for a business, right? What I'm writing for a kid, what I'm writing for, like you're able to kind of understand the branches of your tree of writing now. So I think it's dope, man, to listen to you. And then also the excitement you have, you're able to gauge your tonality, voice level. Like there's a whole bunch of things that I've watched you be able to do with various arenas. So when did you figure out how to approach the writing style for different jobs?
Wow. I think a lot of freestyling helped that a lot, like when, I came up freestyling, I started, that's how I started this. And like, even every show, everything I do, like improv is somewhere, in it. And I just noticed that the live energy is always different for me. You know what I mean? Like it fills me up in a different way, in a different place. And so I had to learn how to capture the excitement of live when I'm alone in the studio. You know what I mean?
Okay.
It's like, how do I get that? It almost feels like, if there's nobody watching, there's no stakes to go crazy. You know what I mean? It's like Allen Iverson with practice. It's like, man, whatever. Like, don't I show off in the game? Like, don't I kill it? Like, don't tell me about practice. So that's kind of what I had to get my head around and be like, I need to capture live energy. And the way I would do that was improv. Like, all right, because I know, like the back of my mind, I know that if it's trash, I can hit delete and it's gone. There's no stakes. But in live in a show, there are all the stakes. I can't delete. What I mean? There. So it's trying to capture that and that getting into that mind state. So now I watch live performances before I get in the studio. I watch people, great speakers, great performers, great singers. I watch Prince, I watch Mike, I watch Stevie, I watch De La, you know what I mean? I watch amazing performers to get into the live performance mode before I get in the studio, because I don't know what it is. Like I took, like there's things I do live that I don't feel as comfortable doing recording, like singing or whatever. And so people be like, man, you should sing more on your records. And I'm like, I'm scared. You know what I mean? And so people say that to me and they're like, what do you mean? You could just hit delete if it ain't good. And I was like, I think I understand that. And therefore I'm not ready to give my all to it, because I don't know. It's a weird thing. So I got to get into a live mode, because live music for me is the pinnacle of performance. It's playing it in front of people, one take, one time. That's probably why I like wrestling so much. A lot of it is live. It ain't no take two. Oh, he slipped off the top turnbuckle. Let's do it again. Like, nah, it's got to be done correctly. So So yeah, I just get myself into a mind state of live performance. It's like, all right, how is this going to go off live? And
And then,
so that's my mind.
so you got this book. Everybody
Hey.
out there, make sure you get this book. You know, I was going through the book, man, and it's very candid and it's very like, you know, it's basically like you writing rhymes in a way. Like I was able to read it. It's interesting. It's detailed. It got some humor in there because the way you're explaining stuff is very honest, but you can hear your narrative voice of saying it. Like if anybody's, you know, if you're watching this interview, the way he's talking about everything and how detailed, and you can hear the fluctuation of, man, like this, like wow, like the realizations. When you talk with a lot of realization. And reading the book, man, it's dope seeing a lot of realizations of when you a substitute teacher and money, and then, you know, figuring out, is this going to be what it's about, as far as being an artist, or do you need to do something else? So there's a lot of things in here that deal with your journey of life. And what's the difference of writing the book? What was your approach different from writing the albums?
That's a good question. I think maybe right before I wrote the book. I think you mentioned the storytelling and things like that. Yeah. I had to really get back into writing it like I was writing college term papers. You know what I mean? It's like you got the beginning, middle, and end. And also I think remembering, just like when as a writer, you got to keep in mind, you're taught as a writer, as an English guy, your first draft is going to be trash. Like you're kind of taught to believe that. And, you know, and taking that into MCing, you're like, nah, but this is kind of fire though. Like this first draft is actually pretty good.
What's your degree so people can know?
Oh, English and African American Studies.
There we go.
So you're taught like first draft is probably trash. Don't get married to it. Like get ready to chop some things off. You got to chop some limbs off. And so I had an editor involved in the process that really helped me out. Shout out to Courtney Omega. She was like, you got to remember, like, don't get married to any of this stuff. And I'm like, but this is good. This is good. And she's like, you know what? Save it for the next book. What about the next book? You know, have a starting and ending point. And so I was like, all right, we're going to end with the Guinness World Record because I feel like that was a big milestone. Yeah. And that happened in 2018. Like since then, there's been so many more, you know what I mean? So she's like, think about what the next book is going to be like. And I'm like, okay, good. And so
did you find as you're writing the book, because when I wrote mine as well, I felt what you're saying, like maybe I should pause until I accomplish this. Like I don't want to close the book yet because I got some things I'm working on that might kind of supersede this what I reached. So I don't want to finish it. Like
it's like that's think about the next book. You know, J Zone's book. Have you read that one?
I haven't, but I remember. Read. Yeah. The first, he only had one, or he has more.
I think it's one.
The one, oh yeah, definitely. I remember that.
Yeah, that was like one of the earlier ones. But he he ends it with like kind of a downer, where it's like, yo, I went to this rap show and it was awful, like, and it was time to do something different. You know what I mean? Like. But it was
he had a lot of humor in that book too.
But it was hilarious. Yeah, the book is so good. It's so funny. Like he has such a great mind for humor, great comedic timing. And so I learned a lot from that book. And also thinking like, all right, well, it doesn't have to end with a happy note. It just ends. It can end at a moment where you learn a dope lesson. You know what I'm saying? And so all my editor kept saying was like, book number two. Like, don't give it all away. Like you got a really good story here. Yeah. But what about the rest, you know? And so I had to constantly pull back and be like, well, what is there something that I could expand on, but maybe shouldn't yet, you know? Because I feel like the book is very honest, very open, very candid.
Very honest,
honest. And so
I just want to say the name of it for people that maybe just listening, driving or whatever. It's called Dream Master, a memoir.
Yes. Check it out. It's on Amazon. It's all these cool places. I got a few signed copies on my website, and there's an audio book if you don't like actually picking up books and reading them the old school way. And I added an extra chapter because that, again, you know, it's like as an artist, you're like, all right, this got to be the bonus edition. You know, you got to give them the bonus track, you know? So I was like, well, okay, I'm going to do an extra chapter because right as this book went to print, my dad passed away. And so I was like, all right, Thank you. And this was something that I had to talk about, you know what I mean? Because I was like, all right, I haven't even put it in my music at this point, you know what I mean? It was just like, but it was a very important moment that, you know, of us rekindling our relationship and things like that. And it tied in the main story of the book. So yeah, it was wild, man. I had to go back to Philly and deal with that. But at the very same time, the election was happening. So like the Philly was like the hotbed on like the final votes for the presidency. Like Philly was on lockdown. I was staying like 3 blocks from where all the votes were being counted. Like it was just a lot happening. So I was like, this gotta go in a book. Like it just sounds like a wild story. So so yeah, I was able to add that plus some other little tidbit stories. One of my favorite music memoirs is, I don't know if you read it, but it's the Violent J ICP book. It's a wild book, man. Violent J is a wild boy. But what I liked about his audio book is that he wrote a book, and then when he was doing the audio, he was like, oh yeah, that reminds me of this. And he starts telling this whole different story for another 15 minutes that's not in the actual like written book.
Right.
Like, oh yeah, but my editor didn't want me to tell you this, but yo, this time this happened, you know, and he starts telling these stories. It's so wild because it feels so off kilter. Like, you know what I mean? It's like against the rules. So it feels like, man, this could go off the rails at any time here. But that's the excitement of it. So yeah, I think it's called Beyond the Paint, the Insane Clown Posse story. And it's a wild, like, I wasn't really a fan of them coming up, but like the story in it is so dope because it's just like, man, like people didn't like us, but we just kept going. You know what I mean?
I think that's what's dope about your book is like, even if somebody hasn't heard your music, for me reading the book, I feel I can hand it to somebody and they're gonna be like, yo, this dude is super interesting and like so honest, and it's very detailed. That's what I want to tell everybody. Like, and you can see the writing levels from doing the music and then becoming an author, and it's all a story within it. And then I read in the book that you also did gospel rap or still do it. Is that still something, you know?
No, I feel like I started off in the gospel group in Philly. Shout out to O'Henny, a lot of my homies that are still making music. We were in this gospel movement. Back in those days, there was a really dope gospel rap group called the Cross Movement. And they were just fire MCs who were just like fired up about gospel. So they would do shows in the city, and they were like super dope. This guy Ambassador is one of the best MCs I've ever heard in my life. And I was like, man, like we're gonna do that because we wanted to just create a positive force in the city. I didn't use profanity in my music, so they were like, all right, well, you know, it's right there. Like, just, you know, sprinkle in some of the word you might know. And I was like, all right, cool. And so
how about currently profanity, so people can know, they can check it out and play it with.
Currently I'll be cussing like no, I'm just kidding. No, I actually don't. I don't use profanity in any of my music.
Okay.
And, it's just been a thing from literally album 1 to now, 2006 to now, where
it's the same thing on all my solo stuff. I don't curse.
Yeah, like I picked that up about you too, but it's like I don't make that an advertising point to be like, no cussing on this album.
Yeah,
you know what I mean?
It's like, it's wild, man. This goes to a point of how dope you are, is the fact that people are listening to how dope you are and don't even realize you're not cursing.
Right. They don't even realize it.
That's what's so dope.
I've had people ask me like, yo, is it hard to not throw this in there and be like, man, you know, wouldn't this work here? Like, no, it's not hard. It's not hard. I've been doing it my whole life. And at this point, I don't even know why I started doing it. I was just like, you know what? I know how I would feel if my mom was front row and I got to say something crazy. You know what I mean? I guess that's really what it came down to. And so that was early on. And I was like, you know what? I've been doing it this long. It's going to be clean from here on out. And so that's just helped me with getting music into academia and other places, and to go play shows at libraries and do stuff with kids. Like, and it's a natural progression. It's not like I got to be like, oh, let me play the clean version. You know, I gotta, you know, it's like, nah, the music is there. It is what it is. So,
and what's so dope about you though, Mega Ran, is the fact that without the cursing, you're still respected by the best.
Now that part, that's really what means the most. Right? It's like to be able to get the respect from your peers.
That's what I'm saying. Like, so for those out there that's like stuck in between this, I thought, you know, look, I'm the biggest Coogee rap fan there is. That's my favorite rapper coming up. So my mindset was thinking I got to curse and wild out. So I got rhymes when I started early, just off the chain with the cursing, because I'm a Coogee rap fan. But then as you get older and you start bumping into people and you start realizing, like, you know, if it's written well, it's written well, no matter what.
Exactly.
And
100%.
And that's
so
what's
yeah,
good.
we were doing the gospel rap thing. I just want to tie that up. I feel like gospel means the truth. That's what it means. And so if you are bringing the truth in your music, then yes, that is your gospel. So yes, you are a gospel artist. I feel like the only limitation I found with gospel rap is that we would only play in churches. And I felt like if the goal of gospel rap is to spread the truth, then the people in the church already know the truth, or they're already getting it from the man on the pulpit. So I need to be in the clubs. I need to be in the bar. I need to be on those corners in the ciphers if I'm going to bring the truth, because I feel like the people that are going to get it need to get it. And Jesus didn't hang in church. He hung out with the lowlifes, the prostitutes, the destitute. You know what I mean? So if the goal to me is to save people, or to get people to read and see the truth, then you got to go to where the people are. And I found myself, if we were labeled gospel and then we're out at a bar, people like, oh, look at him, another fake wannabe Christian. He ain't, he in the bar. And it's like, yo, I was ministering to this brother and spitting the raps that I still spit. But yet, the outside view could be that I'm, not being true to myself. So you find yourself, you put yourself in a position where you can take a lot of judgment. And so I was like, well, instead of being limited in that way, I'd rather just call this music hip hop and just take it where it's going to be taken.
And I think what you're doing is spreading the same message through different arenas and people from all these different arenas that might like wrestling get to hear you rap and then be like, let me be, even if they're in gospel stuff, they'd be like, you know what, Mega Ran is doing this and that. Like, you don't know who you're sometimes like, inspiring, motivating. So you being in all these arenas, you're still doing that same task. So what about writing at home or in the studio? What's your best atmosphere? Do you like to write at home solely and then go to the studio, or do you like to get to the studio and write? What's that vibe like for you now?
Good question. Now that I have a kid at home, writing in the studio is my best. But even before that, I think, writing in the studio, because again, I like to capture the live vibe. So it's like, yo, the mic's right there, the beat's right there. Let's go. And so it's like the pressure has to be on. It's like when I was in college, like the last minute term paper was my move. And it would be my best work.
Can you talk about that a little more? Because this is why I want you to talk about this. Because I've gone to college too, right? And I feel like it gave me some discipline in finishing papers and writing. So, and that's what I keep hearing you kind of bring up, like, pressure's on, I got to finish this. Like having those deadlines and like, so I tell people, like, what's wrong with a deadline when, if you set it on yourself versus if you're at school, and this doesn't have to be college, but let's say high school or middle school, and your papers due Friday, you would do it.
Yep.
Right. So why do you, so has that, I guess, educational background helped with your discipline of finishing?
Yes. I always say, like, I can't remember more than like 10 things I picked up at college, like in a classroom. However, I learned a lot about myself, and I picked up a lot of discipline, a lot of like self-sufficient, self-starter stuff that came from college, because your mom's not over you saying, wake up, get it, go to school, go do that term paper, so you learn about yourself in academia. And so that's what it did for me, is it taught me how to perform under pressure, and that I work best with a deadline. Don't tell me, whenever you want to get it done, because I'm gonna get it done an hour before you want it done. You know what I'm saying? Tell me exactly when it needs to be done so that I can have that in my mind, so that I can work on it. And so, I often do my best work under pressure. So when somebody says, I need this in 2 days, it's like, all right, let's go. You know what I mean? So the pressure is what creates the diamond. You know what I'm saying? So if you don't have pressure and deadlines, I think it can create or lead to a little bit of complacency, where if you don't have a sense of urgency, what I'm saying, when it comes to creating and performing, and that risk factor has to be there. Like, man, what if I mess this up? What if I better do a good job, because they might not call me again? Like, you need a little bit of that risk and that those high stakes involved to do my best, at least for me.
Did you look at it as accepting the duality of being mega ran and being business ran, right?
Mm-hmm.
Because you could be mega ran, you got your song, you write it, take as long as you want for your song, but you know, but business ran, this is due tomorrow. Now, the quality control, you're trying to say, okay, I usually take this long to write my stuff. You know, am I going to have the same quality control in there because of that? When did you figure that part out and be confident in saying, I can hit these deadlines? I got to do business ran versus mega ran.
Oh, it's really tough. But yeah, I probably take longer with my own stuff. I'm maybe a little more hard on myself. I remember saying it one time because it's kind of in the back of my head. It's like you write every verse thinking that your favorite rapper is about to jump on the song with you. Like Coogee Rap is about to hop on right after you, you know?
Right.
And so if you keep that mentality, like, yo, somebody amazing is about to hear this and maybe we'll jump on after you, then you gotta execute. So yeah, I think just getting that into me where I know that I have to execute, and when I do take longer on my own stuff, but I try to set dates and things like that where I'm like, I want this out by a certain time. But I've learned over probably the last 5 years, I feel like I learned something with every release, but I've learned the power in the rewrite or in the edit for sure. Like this Kids album, it sounded completely different 3 months before it came out, you know, but I came back in, I edited, I said, oh, let's change this verse, let's shorten this verse, let's add something a little more fun here, let's bring in a horn player here, you know. So learning that as right as your first mind could be, I think having a clear mind and coming back to it a day later or even an hour later can get a whole new idea going on it. So I've learned the power in just letting something sit for a minute and coming back to it.
What's the name of the Kids album? So everybody.
It's called Buddy's Magic Toy Box. It's out now. It's done really well. We're actually trying to push for a Grammy nomination for it for children's. It's on the short list now, and it's really fun, man. I got to experiment a lot of different genres and have some fun with it. So I wrote songs that my new son will hopefully that'll grow up with him. You know what I mean? So there's songs that are early on in his development, and then there's songs that'll be about later issues with development and you know, making friends and just being a good person and things like that. And then going to sleep, you know, on time and things like that. So just building healthy habits within kids, but also making like fun music that can go along with that journey.
So what about, do you prefer to like write to a beat, or you come in with the rhymes already done and then marry it to a beat? What's your preference with that?
These days I write to the beat. I used to always keep a prepared rhyme. I'll be like, you know, it'll just say bars. And then it's just bars. It's just like
there's the ciphers. Remember, we used to be in ciphers. So like we used to have something now. Now that we got older, it's kind of like, when the last time you seen a cipher? Just really
it don't really happen anymore. Like the stakes are too high. I think I remember Fonte saying like, man, I don't rap on other people's instrumentals because I could make a whole new song of my own with that. You know, like if you don't want to waste your words. And if another artist already destroyed this beat, then, you know, why not build something new that someone else can listen to later and want to get on, you know? So I start writing those cipher verses, you know, if I need them, you know, I write them. For me though, and I think in the social media, you know, TikTok and Instagram Reel era, for me, writing those verses are just kind of ways to let people know you still got it. You know, it's like, hey, I'm still writing, still sharp, you know. Or I write verses for a city. If I'm about to go to a city and play, I'll be like, all right, here's one take of me just rhyming some references to that town because I'm going to be there soon. You know, so learning how to fit these rhymes to situations. And even with that, you know, I'll prepare the beat ahead of time. So I'll be like, yo, I'm going to write to some, like I just did a Detroit rap. So we used Selfish, Slum Village, and something like that. So yeah, I try to make sure, but even with that, it's still prepared. So I try not to anymore do the cipher verse.
And then what about punch in or straight through? Because
this is controversial.
Very controversial, man.
This is controversial. Everybody want to be one take Jake, but you know, I use the technology that is afforded you. All right. So the one take Jake is overrated. I'm gonna tell you, it's so overrated to go straight through. Like, who cares? You know, I do agree that you should be able to do it live. And so
Live, sure.
one person I say is Kanye is a guy who and Tupac did it a lot, where you go straight through and then he out of breath on half the lines, you know. But I think that adds to the charm of the recording, to be like, man, I cared about this so much that I just rapped until I was out of breath, you know. But come on, you're in a studio. Like, why not utilize the technology? I shouldn't have to hear you breathing on a record. You know what I'm saying? So unless if it's necessary to the concept or to what you're trying to get across, the emotion, punch in, man. Do 2-3 bars and stop, and just punch in, because it'll sound so much smoother. If you got a great engineer that's worth their salt and knows what they're doing, this will sound so much better if you punch in.
Nobody's gonna know. Like,
and they don't know. They don't know. Nobody knows. Just do it. But don't put yourself in a position where you can't say it live, because you just did a and now you can't rap it. Like, don't do that. But at least make it sound natural.
So what's your atmosphere for creating? Is it like morning, nighttime, dimly lit room, lights on? What's that like for you? Your preference for that?
I'm a midday. I'm not a late night guy anymore. I used to be all night in the studio. Now I'll fall asleep, or it'll really badly affect the product. But midday now, I go in the studio every Wednesday, 1 to 5, whether I have something to make or not. I treat it like a job. It's like I got to clock in and clock out. And I sit down and I listen to beats. I read articles. I might just think about what's maybe missing from my catalog, or what's missing from a last song I created. And then I start working from there. So I like a dimly lit room. I don't like a lot of people, just me and an engineer. And we just go to work. We'll talk a little bit, and then we just get to work. And I get some water, you know, maybe a frosty beverage or something, like a little icy or something. And I just get to work, man. And then I'll stop and take a lunch break, maybe 2 hours in, order some food or something. And then I come back to it. So yeah, it just has to be me and another person, man. I don't no more than 2 people in the studio, man. Like I'll lose my focus in a heartbeat. I'll just not be happy with what I'm creating, you know, with too many folks there. So yeah, I like two people.
So then beats. How are you getting beats? Making the beats? You going on Instagram? I know there's a lot of dope people on Instagram you bump into nowadays. That happens pretty often. What are you looking for? How do you get your beats?
Well, I've been lucky. Beats come to me. You know what I mean? I know amazing producers, K Murdoch, Lost Perception, so many people, Young RJ, that'll just like shoot beats over. And then I'm just like, yeah, okay. But I make beats myself. And but I don't trust my beats, because these guys are way better than me. And so I never know when my beats are done. I'll be like, man, let me just keep tweaking. Let me keep working. Keep working. I never know when they're finished. So I used to be heavy on just beat making. And now I'm like, I know talented people, so I might as well trust them. I know the sound when I hear it. I feel like I've been thinking of what is a Mega Ran type beat. You know, I always think about that. Like, what would be a tight beat for me? And so usually, you know, my preferred way of creating is, or beats are beats that have movements. You know, it starts with maybe some loops, some things, but then something that builds, you know, it builds for the chorus, builds for the third verse, or for the second verse, or for the bridge. Some live instruments come in somewhere. I've really been a big fan of live bass these days. So I'll make my beats without a bass line. Then I'll send them to my guy Isaac, who plays bass, and we get live bass on them. So for the kids album, I did live instruments, live horns on like every record, you know, just to really build and make these things sound musical and fun, you know. So that's made me think now for the next couple of projects, I'll be enlisting like live musicians a lot more to build the sound out. But ideally, I like a beat that's got like an 8-bit sample, but also some soulful drums, you know, a really dope bass line, and a groove that builds throughout, you know, like maybe a loop for the first bit, but just starts to build. But yeah, like I know it when I hear it, so it's really hard to say when people be like, "What type of beats you like? What type of beats you like?" I'm like,
and you know what's so wild,
send
man?
anything.
I like to say this all the time. Pretty much, it's like, you know, send us everything. Send us different styles, because some people will try to predict Mega Ran style. You know what I'm saying? Yeah, about that.
Yeah,
No,
I'm like, don't predict.
You, and
yeah,
then you
don't
get
try
it.
to predict.
That's
like
not
that,
really my style.
Like that beat could challenge you, you know, like that's what good producers do, is kind of challenge you, is they send you stuff that's out of your comfort zone. And then you're like, oh, here we go. This is something different. And then you do, it brings something out of you that neither of you knew was there. So yeah, let MCs create and let them challenge themselves, you know, so don't try to predict where they're going to go.
So what do you do if you get a creative block? You know, how do you get out of that, if you have any?
I go outside, you know, this is the time to go out. I'll take a walk. I'll go somewhere I can people watch, you know, we go to the mall or something. I go read books. I watch TV. I watch a documentary, watch some cartoons, some anime, you know, and try to step into another character. You know, I feel like that's been my way of fighting out of a block, is what if it wasn't Mega Ran writing this? What if it was freaking Spider-Man writing the song? You know, coming up with some other way to another perspective. You know what I'm saying? And that's always helped me to be more creative.
So yeah. So what about 3 pieces of your work, like you want people to go check out right now to get to know who you are, or you know, it's so wild because you're very prolific, right? You've done so much. But there's always that song you may like that people who don't like as much as you, they be like, yo, I love this. You'd be like, I like that joint, but this is my favorite one, or whatever the case.
Yeah.
So, or just even if it's something popular that people need to know. But if you had to suggest three pieces, it could be a song, it could be an album. What it like, let me, go check this out if you want to get to know me.
Okay. All right. So first I'd say, God, that's tough. I mean,
yeah, I know. I'm up here like, I don't know what you're gonna say.
All right, so I would say I have one song that I feel like is like the Mega Ran story. It's a song called Dream Master, which is why I named the book Dream Master. It's on Forever Famicom, produced by K Murdoch. So it's kind of like the Mega Ran life story. I tell it. I play this at shows. I've been playing it for a long time. But it's the story of kind of beginning to end, like how Mega Ran was created or came to be. So Dream Master, there's an acoustic, like a piano version that I really like. So check that one out. From my first album, there's a song called Push, which I think I talk about in the book, but it's one that really I was inspired by me just like struggling, coming up, trying to make this happen, working 2 jobs and then going to the studio at night and just like working hard to try to change my life, and how what motivates me to keep pushing. So I think that can be very motivational for people. So those 2, and then I think a third one I would say is a whole album. It's probably the album Random, RNDM, which came out in 2015. Is kind of like my best full work because I think it combines the worlds of Mega Ran and the worlds of Random together. As a kid who was growing up trying to be everything for everybody, and then finding yourself within that, so there's some great stories on there, and songs that I feel are super important to me. Infinite Lives, Introvert Bars, Same as It Ever Was, Revisions about my teaching experience. So yeah, there's so many records on there that I feel will tell you the full story of who I am. So those are, and then the children's album as a bonus. I think you should check out the Toy Box if you got kids or not, because it's a fun record that you can learn a lot from, and it's got some bops on it.
Yeah, and so everybody make sure we get this book, Dream Master. I'm gonna put the link down in the description and everything, man. Mega Ran, I appreciate you being on here, man. It's been a journey, as you said, and as you described, but it's been a beautiful journey, and I'm sure people that are watching or going to watch as well will be like, oh, that's him from that. Oh, that's him from that. So, which is dope. You know what I'm saying? So I appreciate you being on here, taking time out. Also, let's get into your social media.
All right, so yeah, I'm on Instagram at mega_ran. I'm on Twitter or X at megaran, all one word. It looks like Meg Ryan when it's all scrunched together. People be like, "Yo, was that Meg Ryan that followed me?" Now, also, yeah, I've tried to use the TikTok. I don't really know what I'm doing, but I'm Mega Ran on TikTok. I'm on Patreon every. I do 2 pieces of music a month, so it might be a freestyle, might be a new song, might be a demo. So you get 2 things a month if you sign up. I'm in Discord as well. I'm everywhere. So if you just type in Mega Ran somewhere, you will find me. I guarantee. And I'm always on tour. So check out megaran.com/shows for tour dates. I'm doing a Midwest run this fall. I don't know when this is coming out, but maybe it won't be too late. But I'm working on a wrestling album with my homies T called G1 to the Rescue. It's called 3MB, the 3-man band. So that's going to be out by Halloween. So look out for that if you're a wrestling fan or just a fan of some fun rap music. And yeah, so I'm always working on something new. So but yeah, mostly on Instagram these days.
Yeah, man. Yeah, I really appreciate you being on here. And I actually started teaching a course, a hip hop course, and when I revise it for the next semester, I'm gonna have you in there, man. I'm gonna add you in there for people to study you.
Wow, I would love that.
Yeah, man. I'm going to do that. And then eventually, hopefully, I can have you as a guest to talk to people about that aspect. But I think you should be definitely part of the curriculums, if not the curriculum, kind of just the arenas you've touched and the way that you've contributed to hip hop from some angles that people they know about, but they don't know how to get there, and they don't know at the level it can be reached and attained. And you've proven to be great from all levels. So I appreciate you. So
thank you.
Yeah, man, for sure.
People just need to know that it's possible. Like, and honestly, man, like, what my journey is proof. Your journey, everybody's seeing how hip hop has been able to take people into different arenas. It's just like anything is possible. Like the sky is the limit. Like at this point, like hip hop could pop up freaking anywhere, and I would not be surprised at this point. Like it's been so huge, and it can just keep getting bigger and better. You know, with us helping and bringing a little bit more to it every day. So I appreciate you for doing this podcast. I appreciate you doing the class and just continuing to fuse hip hop and education, you know, in new ways.
Yes, sir. So thank you to everybody out there that's watched the episode. Make sure you check down the descriptions, the like, the comments, and share and everything like that. And how we always end it. What are your words worth? Peace.
Peace.
Sign up now at elevate.miami.edu for my course, Organized Rhyme. Looking at the word legacy, while involving some wordplay, I'll use the first syllable to build upon. We'll use the first syllable, leg. For the second syllable, we'll use an. And for the third syllable, we'll use the word knee. So now we have leg and knee. Can we use it in context with legacy? Let's just see. Wordsworth Productions with a S.com for all merch. I got 2 books available right now. Well, Words Are Worth Volume 1, and I also have a children's book called Socks. Age range from 12 to 15, so it's kind of like the middle school and high school age range, but adults can read it as well. Shout out to our sponsor, the Wizker. If you're into skincare, the Wizker will help prevent razor bumps and make sure you got smooth skin all around. Make sure you order it on Amazon, the Wizker. Make sure you check out Wordsworth-Productions.com. There you can book me if you want to book me for shows, consultations, panels, and things of that nature. And also, it'll give all the upcoming shows that I'll be attending or performing at or appearing at as well. Wordsworth-Productions.com. We write plays, books, movies, anything that deals with writing and creativity. Contact us.